Hello everyone. So, welcome you all to free crash course for competitive exams held by Virat Hindustan Sangam in association with Manifest IAS Bengaluru. So, this program is inspired by Dr. Subramanian Swamy, the stalwart of Indian politics and former member of Rajya Sabha. So, this program was inaugurated on 28th January 2022 and it is being telecast live online, not live. Recordings will be telecasted online every day. So you can watch the program on YouTube channel of Virat Hindustan Sangam. So here is the link for the channel. Next, you can watch it also on Udaya News Karnataka news channel. So here is the link. So this program is by Sri Ravi Shankar sir, who is the State Education Convener for VHS Karnataka, Virat Hindustan Sangam, Karnataka branch, and also he is the president of Good Neighbors India Association. So I am your chief mentor of the program. I have had an experience of mentoring civil service aspirants for past 5 years. Okay, this is a crash course on all the concepts of and all the topics of basics of your curriculum for competitive exams. So we are doing this program in association with Udaya News and Manifest IAS Bengaluru. So this is the your timetable along with syllabus. So we have started right now with polity, then we are going to move to history, later on to economy, geography, and so on and so forth. So you can connect with us by joining our Telegram channel VHS Education Forum. So here is the link and you can join also by clicking this QR code. So as I say every day, what to expect out of these classes and how to make best use of this course. So both veterans and freshers. So veterans means senior aspirants who have already given 3, 4, 5 readings of the sources, can use this as a revision course and clearing of certain crucial concepts. So freshers will get a broad view of what they are supposed to study in the course of their preparation for various competitive exams. So it is helpful for both freshers and veterans. Since it's a free program, you are advised to make best use of this program. Okay. So we have started the classes on 28 January 2022. Now 31st January we are going to discuss various provisions of emergency, governor, president, parliament and many other things. So in yesterday's class, so we, as I say every day, the simple source for your polity, the one and only source for your polity, Indian polity by Lakshmikant. So, idu Kannadadallೂ translation ಇದೆ. ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೂ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಷನ್ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಓದಿ ಬರೆಯತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಅಭ್ಯರ್ಥಿಗಳು ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀಕಾಂತ್ ಕನ್ನಡ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಷನ್ ಪುಸ್ತಕವನ್ನ ಪಡೆದುಕೊಂಡು ಅಭ್ಯಾಸ ಮಾಡತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು. So, moving forward, so yesterday we have discussed national emergency, Rashtriya emergency, national emergency. So today we are going to discuss President's rule, Rashtrapati Adalita. Rashtrapati Adalita andre ಏನು, ಯಾವಾಗ ಅದನ್ನ ಇಂಪೋಸ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. So we are going to discuss these concepts. So first thing is grounds of imposition. So what is President's rule? So President's rule means the state government, which is the executive power of the state government lies in whom? So even though Chief Minister carries out the administration, Chief Minister, ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳು ಆಡಳಿತವನ್ನ ಕೈಗೊಂಡರೂ ಕೂಡ it is signed, it is carried on the behalf of governor, right? So ರಾಜ್ಯಪಾಲರ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ಆಡಳಿತವನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಆದರೆ however when the state machinery collapses, so president, Rashtrapati, he or she is going to take the control of administration of the state government. So what are the grounds of imposition? When can president rule can be imposed? ಯಾವಾಗ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಪತಿ ಆಡಳಿತವನ್ನ ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು? So there are certain conditions. Also there are certain articles. Article 355. What does Article 355 say? Article 355 says that it imposes a duty on the center. Duty. So center has a duty to ensure that government in the state government is carried out according to the provisions of the constitution. ಸಂವಿಧಾನದ ಪ್ರಕಾರವಾಗಿ ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಆಡಳಿತವನ್ನ ಕೈಗೊಳ್ಳಬೇಕು. ಕೈಗೊಂಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಪತಿ ಆಡಳಿತವನ್ನ ಇಂಪೋಸ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. ಸೊ when constitutional machinery ಸಂವಿಧಾನದ ತಂತ್ರ ಏನು ಕುಸಿದು ಹೋದರೆ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಪತಿ ಆಡಳಿತವನ್ನ ಹಾಕಬಹುದು. ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನ ಕಾನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಷನಲ್ ಎಮರ್ಜೆನ್ಸಿ ಅಂತಾನು ಕರೀತಾರೆ. ಸೊ Article 356 is another article. So 356, 355, 356. What does 356 says? It says it empowers the president to issue a proclamation. So when the constitutional machinery breaks according to 355, under 356 the president issues a proclamation of president rule. That is the exact word. So if he is satisfied, what is there in the constitution? If the president is satisfied that a situation has arisen, so there is some situation in the state in which the state government cannot be carried out in accordance with the provisions of the constitution. ಸಂವಿಧಾನದ ಪ್ರಕಾರವಾಗಿ ಆಡಳಿತವನ್ನ ನಡೆಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆಗ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಪತಿ ಆಡಳಿತವನ್ನ ಇಂಪೋಸ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. So one more article is important with respect to president's rule. That is Article 365. What does Article 365 say? It says whenever a state fails to comply with or give effect to any direction from the center. So yesterday in administrative relations, I told center can give certain directions to the state government. So if the state government fails to adhere, if it fails to follow the directions from the central government, then there is a situation has arisen, there is a constitutionally the government cannot be carried out, then president's rule can be imposed. So these are the three conditions. So next comes your topic of parliamentary approval. So once president with the aid and advice, what do you mean by aid and advice? Aid and advice means president cannot on his own rule the country. He has to seek the advice. So according to the advice of Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers is headed by whom? Prime Minister. According to their advice, Council of Ministers advice, he runs the country. Okay. So next is parliamentary approval. Once the president imposes the state emergency, parliament has to approve it within 2 months. So in the case of national emergency, it is 1 month. In the case of president rule, it is 2 months. So what is the majority? So in the case of national emergency, it is special majority. However, in the case of president's rule, it is simple majority. So what is simple majority? I have discussed already in the class on amendments. Okay. So if both the houses of the parliament, both the houses means what? Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha approves the proclamation of president's rule, it continues for how many days? 6 months at a time. So it can be extended for any amount of time. So not any amount of time, but for 3 years, maximum period of 3 years. So after 3 years, if president's rule has to be continued, then the the president has to seek a report from the election commission. So election commission has to give a report saying that election cannot be held. Then only the president's rule can be continued further. Okay, next comes your duration. I discussed the duration, which is 6 months, subject to the maximum period of 3 years. So what are the consequences of president's rule? ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಪತಿ ಆಡಳಿತವನ್ನ ಹೇರಿದಾಗ ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ? What are the consequences? So there are few consequences. He or she, the president, can take up the functions of the state government. I already told, he can run the state government on his own with the aid and advice of Council of Ministers. So he can declare the state power of state legislature. ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಅಸೆಂಬ್ಲಿ ಆ ಪವರ್ ಸೆಂಟ್ರಲ್ ಪಾರ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸರ್ಸೈಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಸೊ power of state legislative assembly is taken over by whom? Is taken over by the parliament. He can only when the president says. So he can also take any other steps, including the suspension of constitutional provisions relating to any body or any other authority. Okay. So after this, so once the president's rule is imposed, the state legislative assembly, similar to parliament at the central level, we have state legislative assembly at the state level. So once president's rule is imposed, what happens? It stands dissolved. So the lawmaking authority can be delegated to the parliament can delegate. The parliament, what can it do? The lawmaking authority. So nobody will be at the state legislature will be empty. Or then what can the parliament will give the power of lawmaking to the president. President cannot take it upon himself by own. Only when the parliament gives the power, the president can take the lawmaking power. Okay, next comes the concept of use of Article 356. So one of the most controversial articles in Indian Constitution. So whenever there is a difference, whenever there is a different parties so till 1967 there was single party rule. Single party rule means only the Congress party was ruling at the central as well as the state level. However, what happens post 1967 in the elections? Congress gets defeated. Afterwards, what happens? Whenever there is a different party at the state level, so they say some constitutional issue they will take up and dissolve the state government. So it has become a political tool to teach the opposition a lesson, to fight the opposition in a indirect way, which is illegal. So this president rule was imposed at the whims and fancies of the central government. So central government used to dissolve the state government at its own wishes. So what used to happen? So all the opposition parties government used to get dissolved. They were held hostage. They were held hostage by the central government. So in the Bommai case, not Basuraj Bommai, but SR Bommai case, 1996. In the SR Bommai case, the Supreme Court gives certain directions when the president's rule can be imposed. It also says imposition of president's rule is subject to judicial review. Central government or the president imposes the president rule in a particular state. The state government can go to the Supreme Court or High Court as saying that this is an illegal act. If the court finds it illegal, they can restore the state legislative assembly which would have been dissolved. So the state legislative assembly which would have been dissolved would be restored. Okay. Next is, so why did this article was included? So this article, what does it do? Earlier I said India has a federal system of polity. However, imposition of president's rule makes the polity a unitary system. So entire states would go under the control of the central government. It makes the constitution or the Indian polity a unitary form of polity. So that is why it has been one of the most controversial acts. So what is in comparison with the national emergency? How president's rule is different from the national emergency? So the differences goes like this. So there are only three conditions under which national emergency can be imposed: war, external aggression, and armed rebellion. However, president's rule can be proclaimed on the. So when the government of a state cannot be carried out in accordance with the provisions of the constitution, who decides that the government is not being carried out in accordance with the provisions of the constitution? It is decided by the president. So he or she decides based on the recommendation of the aid or advice of the cabinet. So that is why it has been controversial. So in national emergency, state legislature and executive would not be dissolved. However, in the president's rule, state executive and legislature, so executive and legislature, you know what it means. So both of them would be dissolved. Under national emergency, Parliament can make laws with respect to state subjects. However, in the president rule, Parliament can delegate the power of state legislature to president or somebody who is authorized by the president. Next is, there is no maximum period of national emergency. It can be imposed indefinitely. However, the president's rule can be imposed only for 3 months. Next goes, under national emergency, relation between center with all the states. So center with the 28 states, the relationship gets modified. However, in the president's rule, only that particular state where president rule is imposed. Suppose president rule is imposed in the state of Tamil Nadu. Only with respect to the state of Tamil Nadu, the relationship between the center and states undergo modification. However, state of Karnataka and other states would remain unaffected. Okay. So here president's national emergency requires what? Say a special majority. What does president's rule require? It requires simple majority. So there are many other differences. You can look into the book. So these are the major differences. So scope of judicial review. I already said in the SR Bommai case, the Supreme Court has said that president's rule is subject to judicial review. Judicial review. What is judicial review? Means any act or legislation or executive order, anything which the executive or legislation does, so the court can review it. Court can say this is illegal, you cannot implement it. That is what is meant by judicial review. What is the article? Article 32 with respect to fundamental rights for Supreme Court and Article 226 for High Court. Okay. Scope of judicial review. So 38th Amendment Act. What did 38th Amendment Act do? The imposition of president's rule was made to be immune. So if the president rule is imposed, 38th Amendment Act said the judiciary can't interfere. However, SR Bommai case, this was overturned. Thus, Supreme Court has given certain directions while before imposition of president's rule. What are the directions? First is judicial review is there in president rule. So the satisfaction of president. So the condition has arisen that the constitution cannot be carried out. that has to be satisfied. So that satisfaction has to be what? It has to be based on relevant material. There has to be on ground facts that constitutional emergency has arisen in the particular state. What is constitutional emergency? I said the provisions of the constitution cannot be carried out in the particular state. Suppose that is fundamental rights cannot be implemented, directive principles cannot be implemented, and all the articles stands invalidated, and there will be chaos. So when the state government acts against the constitution, we can say constitutional emergency has arisen. Next comes the provision of what did the Supreme Court say? Burden lies on the center because President's rule is imposed on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. It is the burden lies on the Union Council of Ministers to prove the imposition, to justify the imposition. Next, a state legislative assembly can be dissolved only after the parliament has approved. I said within 2 months parliament has to approve the proclamation of presidential emergency. So only after presidential emergency is ratified. Ratified means parliament approves. Parliament approves the presidential emergency, then only they can dissolve the state legislative assembly. So likewise there are many guidelines given by the Supreme Court. So cases of proper and improper use. Sometimes, so with respect to Jammu and Kashmir, most of the time it was kept under president's or governor's rule. So there we can say it is proper use because of the security situation, on ground security situation, threat to national integrity and the national interest. Okay. So what are the cases of proper use, proper imposition? So when after general elections, after the Lok Sabha or state legislative assembly elections, no party gets a majority and hung assembly assembly comes up, then president's rule can be imposed. So, and also when the ministry resigns after its defeat in the assembly, no other party is willing to form a. So once the ministry resigns, no other party comes up to take up the or formation of the government, then president's rule can be imposed. So also when the constitutional direction, so central government gives direction to state governments with respect to the matters in the union list. I already said what is union list. So in those aspects, the central government can impose the president's rule. Likewise, there are many other cases of proper and improper use. What are the conditions of improper use? In improper use, so when the president's rule is imposed, so here one factor is important. The president's rule is most of the time imposed based on the recommendation of the governor. So the governor sends a report to the president based on which president's rule is imposed. This factor is important. Okay. Next is, so when the governor on his own recommends the imposition of presidential emergency, that is a case of improper use. So when the conditions are all going right in the state, even then the governor makes a recommendation to the president saying that impose constitutional emergency, that is a case of wrong use. And also without probing, so after the assembly, the governor has to probe, governor has to take into account who can form a government even if there is no clear majority. Without making that assessment, if he directly says impose presidential emergency, that is also a case of improper use. Next is when the ruling party suffers a ruling party at the center. Suppose state government is ruled by BJP or any party Y. Let us say party Y. So the central government used to be party Y, the same party Y. Suppose in the Lok Sabha election, party Y loses, then you cannot hamper the working of state government at the ruled by party Y. So central government, party Y can get changed to party X. However, you cannot change the party Y which is still there at the state government. So this used to happen whenever the central government changed from Congress to BJP or BJP to Congress. They used to remove all the opposition ruled state governments by imposition of president's rule. That is also a case of improper use. Next, we are going to move towards financial emergency. What is the article? Article is 360. Is the article for imposition of financial emergency. So the article 360 empowers the president to impose financial emergency. This is also subject to judicial review. So parliamentary approval and duration. So with respect to parliamentary with respect to parliamentary approval, so like president's rule, parliamentary approval can be done within 2 months, not 1 month as in national emergency. So once the parliament is approved, duration, there is no maximum duration. It can go as long as the executive wishes. So there is no requirement for repeated. There is also no requirement for repeated approval by the parliament. So how parliament approves? They approve by simple majority. Only one time they approve by simple majority. It goes on indefinitely until the executive changes the executive revokes the financial emergency. So has India imposed financial emergency anytime? No, we have not imposed, though there was a grave financial crisis during 1991. Okay, effects of financial emergency. What does it affect? So the central government can issue directions to state government to observe financial propriety. What do you mean by financial propriety? The central government can say the state government, don't do excess expenditure, save the money because the country is reeling under financial emergency. Next comes the central government can issue directions with respect to reduction of salaries of person serving in the state. Not only in the state, but also it can reduce the salaries of judges of Supreme Court and High Court. So this is what is with respect to financial emergency. This much information is important, not very. So however, 352 and 356 are important. 360 is not very important. Okay. So what are the criticisms and articles? So criticism is the federal character will be hampered, right? So I already told central government becomes all powerful. They also say president will become a dictator by imposes an emergency and takes up all the power. Next comes excessive concentration of power in the union government. These are some of the criticisms. So there was lot of opposition from various quarters in the Constitutional Assembly. They said this is a very bad article. So there is no need for imposition of emergency. However, the makers of Constitution were wise enough to say that extraordinary circumstances may arise while ruling a country. That is why they included the provision of emergency. Okay. Next comes So what are the articles? I already mentioned Article 352, 353, 354, 355, 356, 7, 8, 9 and 360. So starting from Article 352 until 360, all the articles relate to emergency. So you need to know the articles which you can quote in the mains examination. Next we are going to move towards the executive. So Is president a part of parliament? Indian parliament constitutes of what and what? So Indian parliament constitutes of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. So this is the lower house, this is the upper house, and president. These three things together, these three authorities together form the parliament. However, president acts as a connector. So this is what? This is legislature, right? This is legislature. So president forms the connection between legislature and executive. How? So he acts upon the aid and advice. So he cannot form the laws or give directions to the administration based on his own whims and fancies. He has to take the aid and advice of Council of Ministers who form the executive. So he is the head of the executive. President is the head of the executive. Also, he is a part of parliament. So he forms a crucial linking between the legislature and executive. So first concept is the election of president. So how president is elected? Who all? So do we elect the president directly? So do me and you go and vote for electing the president like in USA? No. President in India is elected indirectly. There is a provision for indirect election in India. Who all participate? So the elected members of both the houses of parliament. So Lok Sabha members and Rajya Sabha members take part in the election of president. So elected members of legislative assemblies of the state. So we have legislative assemblies at in all the states. All the members of all the legislative assemblies take part in the election of the president. Okay. Next comes the elected members of the, so here do members of the legislative councils. There are 6 states where legislative councils are there. So in these 6 states, do these members of the legislative council take part in the election of the president? No. Only members of legislative assemblies. Also nominated members. So Rajya Sabha has certain nominated members who are not elected. Nominated by whom? Nominated by president. They also do not take part in election of the president. Also the third category is elected members of the legislative assemblies of union territories. There are 2 union territories, Pondicherry, 3 union territories, Pondicherry, now Puducherry, the union territory of what? The union territory of national government, national capital territory of Delhi, and also the union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. These 3 elected assembly members take part in the election of president. So how the election of the president takes place? Okay, 1 second. So how the election of the president takes place? Okay. So the formula for counting the vote. So there are MPs, there are MLAs who take part in the election of the president. So MLA vote is counted like what? So the value of each vote of MLA. So 1 MLA vote. 1 MLA vote. 1 MLA vote is equal to total population of state. Total population of a state divided by what? Total number of elected members in the legislative assembly. Total members in the legislative assembly. Total number of elected members in the legislative assembly into 1/1000. This is the formula for counting the one MLA vote. So total population of state, suppose Karnataka has 6 crore population divided by total elected members. How many elected members? 224 elected members into 1 by 1000. That forms what? That forms the one vote of one MLA. So next is vote of one MP. So vote of one MP vote. One MP vote is equal to total value of vote of all MLAs. Total value of votes of all MLAs of all states. So I told you what is the value of vote of one MLA. So total value of votes of all MLAs of all states. All MLAs of all states divided by total number of elected members in the parliament. Total number of elected members in the parliament. This includes Lok Sabha elected members, Rajya Sabha elected members. To make the concept clear, so I told what is the vote value of one MLA vote. So likewise, all the MLA votes, 224 MLA votes in Karnataka, all those value, the value of votes of all the MLAs in the all states of India divided by total number of elected members in the parliament. This is Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha has how much? So Rajya Sabha has 250. Lok Sabha has 545. These two you add, this it comes to this value. So there is no division by 1000. That is the whole value of vote of one MP. So after this, so this is the value of vote of one MP. So after this, how the election is conducted? So election is conducted by the Election Commission of India. They give one concept called electoral quota. Electoral quota means the winning candidate has to do what? So total number of vote polls. Total, suppose, so to win, suppose a candidate has to win, so he has to get the number as total number of votes divided by 2 plus 1. Suppose there are 10,000 votes. 10,000 divided by 2 is 5,000 plus 1. So a candidate gets 5,001 votes. He gets elected as president. Okay. So this system is called as proportional representation by single transferable vote. So what is meant by proportional representation? So each MLA proportionally represents the population of that particular constituency, right? So we have proportional representation with respect to population, and single transferable vote. So these votes, whatever the vote is casted, right? So these can be transferred. When it can be transferred? When nobody gets a absolute majority. So each vote, each candidate, each person while voting gives priority. Candidate 1, priority 1. Candidate 3 might get priority 2. Candidate 5 can get priority 3. So when nobody gets a majority, the candidates who gets the least number of votes. So suppose someone gets out of, suppose there are 10,000 votes. 10,000 votes. Out of these 10,000, suppose nobody gets a majority and the highest majority might be 3,000 and the least vote might be 500. So the the person who has got 500 votes, so his first priority, his votes will be cancelled and his second priority. So he might have got 500 first priority votes. So in the electoral slip, so only 500 voters has voted the last candidate with priority 1. So since he has got the least votes, his votes will be cancelled, and in the same list they will look up who is the second priority. So those second priority, whoever has got, so those votes will be transferred to that particular candidate. Likewise, this process goes on and on and on until someone gets this number 5001. 5001 is a number I have given. I don't know the total voting numbers. Suppose here Ramnath Kovindji, the recent who is a president in 2017, when he got elected, he got how many votes? 7 lakh 2044 votes. Okay. So this is all about the election of president. One second. Okay. So let us not mess with the technical part. We will continue. Okay, next comes the qualifications, oath and conditions. What are the qualifications, oath and conditions? So suppose I have to get elected as a president, what should be my qualification? Okay, the basic qualification is I should be a citizen of India, I should have completed 35 years of age, I should have been qualified to be a member of Lok Sabha. What is the qualification? We will discuss on the chapter of Parliament. And also, he should not hold any office of profit. What is office of profit? So, office of profit means, so there are, here it is given that certain posts like being a chief minister or a governor or a vice president, these posts are not considered to be office of profit. Suppose you are appointed as some head of PSU, so that might be considered as a office of profit. So any office out of which you derive profit, so that office is called as office of profit. So oath and conditions. What is the oath? The oath of president is very, very important. What is the oath of president? So the oath goes like, so whoever has to become a president, he has to swear a oath to faithfully execute the office, to preserve, protect and defend the constitution of and the law, to devote himself or herself to the service and well-being of the people of India. 3 points. The oath of president is very, very important. So, office of profit, what is it said? Election Commission. Election Commission has said that the post of parliamentary secretaries, you know what is parliamentary secretaries? They are a least category of, so Council of Ministers, you know, Council of Ministers, right? In the Council of Ministers, there are cabinet ministers, there are ministers with independent charge, there are ministers of state. Likewise, there is the last category called parliamentary secretaries. In the Delhi Legislative Assembly case, the Election Commission has said the parliamentary secretaries are a post of are posts which are office of profit. So these office of profit include the posts which there is they are susceptible to influence the government. So they influence the government. So the Election Commission order has said MPs and MLAs as members of the legislature hold the government accountable for its work. The essence of disqualification under the office of profit law is if legislation holds a office of profit under the government, they might be susceptible to government influence. So what does they say? See, the MLAs and MPs should hold the government accountable, right? So they themselves hold office of profit, so they will be influenced by the government. That is what is said in Delhi Parliamentary Secretary's case. Okay, now we have discussed the oath. Next is the conditions. Conditions of President's office. So what are the conditions? He should not be a member of both the houses of parliament, either of. So he should not be a member of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha or any state legislative assembly, and he should not hold office of profit. I told already what is office of profit. So he can use Rashtrapati Bhavan without making any rent. So if you have any chance, please go and visit Rashtrapati Bhavan. It is no less than a palace, one of the most beautiful monuments in India, constructed by whom? Edward Lutyens. Lutyens constructed it along with Baker, Herbert Baker. So next comes, so he is entitled to emoluments and allowances. So these are certain conditions. Term, impeachment and vacancy. What are the term of President's office? The term of President office is 5 years. However, he holds office until new president takes charge, because we cannot run the country without a president. Next is impeachment of president. How can impeachment take place? So the process is first the impeachment charges can be initiated by either house, that is Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha. State legislative assemblies cannot start a impeachment proceedings. So in this, these proceedings should be signed by whom? They should be signed by 1/4 members of the house. 1/4 members of the house should frame the charges. So and give 1/4, that is 545 members are there, out of which 1/4 members should agree for the charges, and they should give 14 days notice to the president, within which he has to appear. He has the right to appear and represent in such investigation, after which a resolution has to be passed with the 2/3 majority. 2/3 majority of the total membership. So 545 members are there in Lok Sabha. 2/3 members should vote for the impeachment, in favor of impeachment. Next, it goes to the other house. There also similar procedure. So 2/3 members in the other house should also vote in favor of impeachment. So when that is done, the president stands impeached. So here the no president has been impeached till date. So the one change is nominated members of both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha take place. So though they don't vote in the election of president, they do vote in the impeachment of president. This is one thing. And state legislative assembly members do not vote in the impeachment of president. Next comes the issue of vacancy in president's office. Suppose vacancy, when can it arise? After 5 years. After the completion of term of 5 years, vacancy can arise, and also by his or her resignation, vacancy can arise. So also by impeachment vacancy can arise, or by death of sitting president vacancy can arise, or also when he or she becomes disqualified. So disqualified for the post, then vacancy can arise. So when vacancy arises, vice president starts acting as the president. Even when vice president is also not there, so CJI, Chief Justice of India, starts acting as the president of India. So after the vacancy has arisen, within 6 months, a new presidential election should be carried out, and after which the new president takes charge. So powers and functions of the president. So what are the powers? Executive powers, legislative power, so many powers are there. We have to look into each power in depth. So what are the executive power? So all the executive actions, whatever the government of India does, all this will be undertaken in the name of president. So president signs the order. So every executive order will be taken in the name of president. So he can, next is, he appoints the prime minister, they and council of ministers. So council of ministers and the prime minister is appointed by the president. However, he cannot appoint anybody on its own discretion. He has to appoint those who has the majority. Okay. So they hold office during the pleasure of the president. This term, pleasure of the president, is very, very important. Pleasure means what? At his discretion. So, however, he cannot exercise his discretion and remove the prime minister whenever he wants. So, as long as the prime minister and council of ministers holds majority in the Lok Sabha, he or she cannot be removed by the president. So, along with this, the executive powers are, he appoints the Attorney General of India, he appoints the CAG, he appoints the chairman and members of UPSC, the exam which most of you are preparing. So, he can ask for information relating to day-to-day administration. So, he can appoint commission for the welfare of SC/ST and so many other executive powers. Next is legislative powers. Legislative powers means what? Law-making powers. So, the Lok Sabha. So, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha can be prorogued. The Lok Sabha can be summoned or prorogued or dissolved. Summon means what? So, the Lok Sabha convene the sitting. So, the MPs will be in their constituencies. So, President says the Lok Sabha session is going to start from this date to this date. Is going to start from this date. So, all of them will come and attend the session. So, how many sessions are there regularly held? So, there are 3 sessions. What are they? One is budget session, another is monsoon session, the third one is winter session. 3 sessions in a month, in a year. Okay. So, along with this, he addresses the parliament at the commencement of each year. So, it is called as speech of president. So, he can also send messages to both the houses. Both the houses, the president can send messages. So, also he nominates 12 members to the Rajya Sabha. So, 12 members can be nominated to the Rajya Sabha. So, Sachin Tendulkar was nominated. Also, Srimati Rekha, film actress, was nominated. So, based on the presidential nomination. So, also disqualification of members of parliament. Disqualification means what? We elect the parliamentarians. If they don't satisfy the basic criterions, they will be disqualified. Who decides it? It is decided by the president based on report from election commission. So also certain types of bills. What are the certain type of bills? Money bill and financial bill. Type 1 would be also the formation of state. We discussed the formation of state under Article 3. So formation of states will be these kind of bills will be introduced in the parliament only with the recommendation of the president. Okay. So whenever a bill, so you know what is a bill? A legislation. So whenever a bill after being passed by Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, it goes to the president, he has certain choices. What are the choices? He can give his assent to the bill. So he can assent the bill or he can withhold. He may say, I am not going to sign the bill. Also, he can return the bill. So he can say, take this bill and get lost. So these are the three options between him. Also, the governor, as I said in the other class, governor also reserves certain bills for the assent of the president. There also he has the similar choices. So he can also promote ordinances. So what is a ordinance? Ordinances are temporary legislation. So I said there are three sessions in a year. So these sessions do not happen. These sessions of the parliament do not happen throughout the year, right? So during the break of the session, it is called as recess. During the recess of the parliament, if some emergency situation arises, a new law has to be formed. A temporary law in the form of ordinances will be formed by the executive, that is the government. So who signs for that ordinance? It is the president. It has the same force as a law of a parliament. However, it has to be ratified within 6 months. So within 6 months it has to get assent of the parliament. So likewise, these are the major legislative powers of president. So what are the financial powers? So money bill, I said money bill can be introduced in the parliament only after president says. What is money bill? We are going to discuss in the chapter on parliament. Money bill is one bill which has provisions for imposition of taxes, imposition of cesses, surcharges and collection of taxes, various types of taxes, variation in the amount of taxes. So all these provision, which bill has all these provision. So those kind of bills and also that bill which deals majorly with the collection of taxes for Consolidated Fund of India, that particular bill is called as money bill. So we are going to discuss in detail money bill on the chapter of on parliament. So money bill can be introduced only with this prior recommendation. Only when the president says you introduce the bill in the parliament, then only the government can introduce. So why this special provision? Because or else the opposition or private members. So private members means what? Those members who are not part of the government, they will also start introducing money bills in the parliament. So only when the president says this particular bill can be introduced in the parliament, then only money bill can be introduced. So budget is laid before. So today is 30th of August. Today economic survey 30th of January 2022. So today economic survey has come out. Tomorrow 1st of February budget is going to be taking place. So budget can be laid before the parliament. So only when president says so. Next is no demand for grant. No demand for grant means what? Demand for grant means what? So we have so many ministries. So each ministry has so many demands for money. So each ministry requires money for functioning of various schemes, programs, and many stuff. So they demand for money. So these money, so they demand for money from whom? From the parliament to draw the money from Consolidated Fund of India. What is Consolidated Fund of India? We are going to discuss in the chapter of parliament. So to discuss, so to take the money from Consolidated Fund, these ministries demand the money. So this money is called as demand for grants. Okay. So these are some of the financial powers. Next comes judicial power of the president. So he appoints the Chief Justice of India and other Supreme Court judges. So he can ask advice under which act? Under which article? So article 143. So under this article, the president can seek advice. The president can seek advice from whom? From the Supreme Court on various issues. Okay. Next comes he can grant pardon, reprieve, respite, remission, and suspend certain sentences. So you commit a crime, you will be jailed based on various provisions of CRPC and IPC, and so if you want the reduction of the sentence, you have to appeal to the president. So in all cases, so where also even the governor has these provisions of not pardoning, remission, respite, commutation. Even governor has the power. However, in certain cases, only the president has the exclusive power. What are the cases? So only when the punishment is by court martial. Court martial means what? The armed forces impersonal. Armed forces, Indian Army, Navy, Air Force. So they commit a crime, they won't be tried in the normal courts. They have a separate court. So that court martial, that is called as, the trial under such courts is called as court martialing. Okay. So in all cases where the punishment is offense is against union law. So union law, any offense, you commit a crime against union law, so the commutation, remission, respite will be given by the president, not by the governor. So whenever there is a sentence of death, then also pardoning can only be done by president. So diplomatic powers. So diplomatic power means you become Indian Foreign Service officers or you go to some other country, your first job is to go and meet the president of that particular country. Likewise, any diplomats from any country come to India, so they have to go and meet the president and take his permission to act as ambassadors or high commissioners of their country in India. So next comes military powers. So he is the chief commander, supreme commander of the armed forces. Who is the supreme commander of the armed forces? It is the president. So next is emergency powers. I told in the chapter of emergency what are the emergency powers. So president's rule, national emergency, financial emergency would be proclaimed by whom? By the president. Next comes the veto power. So veto power of president. So what is veto power? Veto. So you would have heard the term veto when it comes to United the bill back, or he can assign the bill, or he can keep it pending. So president has discretion. So nobody can force the president. So even in certain conditions, even the Council of Ministers cannot force. Okay. So there are many types of veto. absolute veto, qualified veto, suspensive veto, pocket veto. However, Indian President has three types of veto: absolute, suspensive, and pocket veto. The Indian President doesn't have qualified veto. So, what is absolute veto? It is absolute power. So, a bill comes to the President says, I am not going to give assent. It is absolute veto. Okay. So, this is with respect to whom? This cannot be done with all bills. Private member bill, private member means who is not part of the government. So, his bill gets passed and comes to the President. President says, no, I am not going to give assent. Next is, this can also be exercised when the cabinet resigns. So, a bill comes to the President after the cabinet resigns. So, cabinet says, give assent to the bill, but you have already resigned. So, the President can say, no, I am not going to give. This is absolute veto. Suspensive veto means what? A bill after being passed by the Parliament, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, comes to the President. So, the President can return the bill to the Parliament. When the Parliament again passes it by the same majority, simple majority, then the President has to give his consent. So, he has only temporary discretion. When the Parliament passes it again, he has no choice but to give his assent. So, this is by simple majority. However, qualified veto is, I told qualified veto is not there in Indian Parliament, Indian President. So, qualified veto means when the bill is sent back, the Parliament passes it by special majority. So, when I already said what is special majority? 2/3 majority. 2/3 plus half of total membership. So, qualified veto means if the bill is again passed by special majority. However, it is not there. Next is pocket veto. Pocket veto means the President simply keeps the bill pending. So, neither he ratifies it, nor he rejects it, nor he returns the bill to the Parliament. He simply keeps it pending. Then the bill becomes dead. So, such a veto is called pocket veto. So, this pocket veto is already also seen in USA President. However, there he can exercise pocket veto only for 10 days. So, after 10 days, the Congress means not the Indian National Congress, but the Parliament of USA is called as Congress. So, the Congress can assent the bill after 10 days. However, in India, no such provision. Therefore, Indian President's pocket veto is bigger than. So, Indian President's pocket veto means is bigger than the pocket veto of USA. So, you can simply say the bill comes, President keeps the bill in his pocket without doing anything. That is what is meant by pocket veto. Simple for your understanding. Next comes presidential veto over state legislation. So, I said governor will reserve certain bills for the assent of the President. There also President has veto powers, the same veto powers. He may give his assent, he may withhold his assent, or he may return the bill. So, next is ordinance making power of the President. So, which is the article? Article is 123, 1 to 3, simple to remember. So, governor at the state also has the ordinance making power. What is the article for governor to make ordinances? It is article 213. A small shortcut for all of you to remember. 1, 2, 3 President. 2, if you put 2 here, 1 here, 2 and 3 governors ordinance making power. Simple for remembrance. Okay. So, I already told what is ordinance. Ordinances are promulgated when the parliament is not in session due to some exigency. So there are certain conditions for promulgating ordinance, four limitations. So first limitation is only when parliament is not in session. So he or she, the president can make an ordinance when he is satisfied that there is conditions exist that ordinance is immediately required, because or else what happens, this ordinance is treated as a bypassing of parliament. So parliament, the government wants to bypass by shortcut. So this Aadhaar Act, so many acts they pass by ordinance, later gets ratified by the parliament. So it is not. So it is against the principles of parliamentary democracy. So with respect to, in the Cooper case, so this case is important with respect to Cooper case and DC Wadhwa case. These two cases are important with respect to promulgation of ordinances. So in the Cooper case, so the satisfaction of president can be questioned by the judiciary. So judicial review with respect to ordinance comes under which case? Cooper case. So that is the second condition. So only when he is satisfied the condition is exists, then only he can promulgate the ordinance. That is the second condition. Third is, third condition is president's ordinance making power is coexistential power of parliament. So parliament, wherever they can make a law, there all ordinance can be promulgated. However, the time duration is not the same, only 6 months. So after 6 months they have to take the assent of parliament. So the last condition is, once the parliament convenes, all the ordinances should be laid before the parliament. So the parliament has to sign the ordinance. So ratify the ordinance, then only the ordinance become an act. Okay. So next is the DC Wadhwa case. What is DC Wadhwa case? So this is an interesting case. In this case, the government of Bihar, what they had done, the same around 256 ordinances were repeatedly kept promulgated. So repeatedly they were promulgated as ordinances. They were not ratified by the state legislative assembly. So in this case, when this case went to the Supreme Court said, no, you cannot promulgate the same ordinance again and again without the ratification of the state legislative assembly. You cannot use ordinance as a bypassing tool. So DC Wadhwa case, Cooper case are important with respect to ordinance making power. Next is most important power, pardoning power of the president. All these death row convicts, so keep sending the petition to the president asking for pardoning. Had they not committed the crime in first place, no need for all this funda. Okay. Which article? Article 72. Article 72 deals with the pardoning power of the president. So where all can the president pardon? I said military court, wherever union law is there, and also the sentences of death. I already said that. So there are five pardoning powers. What are the five pardoning powers? First is pardon. Pardon means what? So pardon means, so it completely absolves of your sentence. Suppose you are sentenced for 5 years in jail. So if you are pardoned, completely all your charges will be taken out. That is pardon, complete remission. So next is commutation. Commutation means, so it is substitution of one form of punishment by another form, by a lighter form. Suppose you are convicted in, so not you, let us not use you, you all be a good citizens, don't commit any crime. Suppose some person is convicted, is given death sentence. So if his sentence is commuted, commutation. So from death sentence, his sentence would be commuted to life sentence. So life in prison. That is what is meant by commutation. A graver sentence by a is substituted by a lighter sentence. Next is remission. Remission means what? Suppose someone is put in jail for 10 years. So his period is reduced. So same 10 years of rigorous imprisonment is converted into 7 years of rigorous imprisonment. The sentence is, the period is reduced. That is remission. Respite. Respite means what? Awarding a lesser sentence. Suppose 10 years of rigorous imprisonment, lesser sentence will be given. Say 5 years. Why? Based on some special condition. What are the special condition? Pregnancy, disability. So based on special conditions, respite would be given. So respite always means special condition. Last is reprieve. What is reprieve? Stay on the execution. So all these Nirbhaya case, all of the convicts were given death sentence. They had bought stay by reprieve. So again and again reprieve. Reprieve means suspension, temporary suspension of the sentence. So suppose someone is said to be executed on this particular day, he delays it by seeking reprieve. So temporary suspension of the sentence. Okay. So death sentence can only be pardoned by president. This is a special fact. And next comes the constitutional position of the president. In the constitution, what position does the president hold? Already said, he is the head of the executive, he is the head of the state, the de facto, de jure ruler of the Indian. So he is the head of state, he is the de jure authority, he is the executive head, he is the constitutional head. So he also forms part of parliament. These are the constitutional position of the president. So in the order of hierarchy, president will always be at number 1. So even the census. So every 10 years census would be carried out. So the first census. So he is called as the first citizen. So first census, first counting will be done by the president. These census officers go to the house of the president, that is Rashtrapati Bhavan, and take his or her details. This is a special fact not known to most of the people. Okay, he is the first citizen. So his wife or his spouse is called as first lady or first husband. So most of the time it is the male person. So it is called as first lady. I'm not sure about first husband, but first lady is sure. So it is the constitutional position. Is the executive power of union shall be vested in the president, which is the article 53. It says the executive power of the union will be vested in the president. Next is article 74. Article 74, what does it say? So there shall be a council of ministers who shall aid and advise. I already said what is aid and advise. All council of ministers aid and advise the president. Article 74. Next is article 75. So article 75 says collective responsibility. So these are the major factors about the president. So important articles with respect to president. So article 52 speaks about President of India. Article 52, most important article. So next, starting from 52 until 78, all the articles speak about president. Here the important articles are article 52, article 72, article 74 and article 75. So article 76 speaks about Attorney General of India. Next, article 112 union budget, which causes to be laid after by the president. Next is Article 123. 123 is ordinances. These are the important articles. Okay. Next, we are going to discuss Vice President. So, Vice President, not very important, but with respect to, so is important in the constitutional framework, but with respect to exams, not very important. However, you have no choice but to study. So, he is next in rank with respect to the president. So, his election of the vice president. So, who is the present vice president? It is Shri M. Venkaiah Naidu ji. So, election of the vice president. So, here compared to the president, state legislative assembly members do not take part in the election of the vice president. It is only the members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So, here both elected members and nominated members, both of them take part in the election of the vice president. So, this is the condition. So, here also it is done by the process of proportional representation by single transferable vote. I already said what is it in the section on president. So, the election is conducted by whom? The election is conducted by Election Commission of India. So, what is the qualification? So, the qualification to be a vice president, you have to be a citizen of India, you have to have completed 35 years of age, and you have to be qualified to be a member of Rajya Sabha. With respect to president, you should have been qualified as a member of Lok Sabha, qualified to be a member of Lok Sabha. Meaning with respect to vice president, you should have been qualified to be a member of Rajya Sabha. And last but not the least, the very condition, he should not hold a office of profit. So, office of profit, most of you might be confused. So, please Google. I have also explained. It is an office out of which you don't derive any monetary profit. So, the post of president, vice president, governor, so chief minister, council of ministers, these are not offices of profit. Okay. These are constitutional posts. Okay. Next comes the oath and affirmation. So, the oath of vice president is different from president. So, there are only two conditions. To bear the first condition is to bear true faith and allegation to the Constitution of India is the first condition. Next is to faithfully discharge the duty of his office. So, these are the only two conditions in his oath. Oaths are very important. Conditions of office. What are the conditions of office? He should not be a member of parliament. He should not hold any office of profit. These are the only two conditions. Term is, as in the case of president, it is only 5 years, not 6, sorry, 5 years. So, it is only 5 years. So, vacancy. So, where all vacancy can occur after the end of 5 years, by his death, by his resignation, by his removal. So, in the case of vacancy of office, nobody else will go and sit. There will be proper election, not like the case of president, where whenever there is a vacancy, vice president acts as a president. So, how vice president is impeached? So, here a formal impeachment is not required. So, he can be removed by a resolution by majority of all the members of Rajya Sabha and agreed by Lok Sabha. So, 250 members are there in Rajya Sabha. So, 125 members, absolute majority, to 125 members pass a resolution removing the vice president. So, then he or she stands removed. However, this resolution has to be agreed by Lok Sabha. Agreed means what? Simple majority. Simple majority means the majority of the persons who are there at that particular day and who have voted, present and voting. Okay, next comes the concept of powers and functions. What are these powers? So his powers are similar to the powers of Vice President of United States. Who is the present Vice President of United States? So it is the first female Vice President and also from Indian origin. It is Srimati Kamala Harris. So she is the Vice President of, so she acts as the Chairman of Senate. Senate is headed by the Vice President. Similarly, our Rajya Sabha is chaired by whom? Vice President. So he acts as a ex officio. Ex officio means what? Out of the powers derived out of his office. So you become a president, Vice President, you have to sit in the as a chairman of Rajya Sabha. So he acts as a president whenever there is a vacancy or any other issues with respect to president. So salaries and all are not very important. Indian and American Vice President, I have already told what is the Indian and American Vice President. So American Vice President, the president in the office dies or resigns, American Vice President automatically becomes president for the rest of the term. Suppose the sitting president dies or resigns or is removed, the Vice President automatically becomes the president. That is not the case with respect to India. He can become a president but only for 6 months, within which election has to be carried out. So articles with respect to Vice President, Article 63, 64, starting from 63 until 71. But these articles are not very important from examinations perspective. Okay. Next comes the very important office in the Indian polity, the office of Prime Minister. So Prime Minister, all of you know, Prime Minister is the de facto. De facto means he is the actual authority. Power lies in Prime Minister, not in the President. So President is de jure. De jure means by judiciary, means by law he is the head. However, on the ground it is the Prime Minister. So how Prime Minister is appointed? So Article 74 and 75 speaks about it. So we elect in the Lok Sabha elections, we elect a party. That party in turn nominates says this person is our Prime Minister. So all the MPs support that particular person. He stands a chance to become a Prime Minister. Okay. It says, the Article 74 says the President appoints the Prime Minister and he holds office during his pleasure. However, the President cannot appoint anyone according to his whims and fancies. He can only appoint those who carry the majority. Okay. Next is the oath, term and salary. Oath is different from both President and Vice President. So the oath is to bear true faith and allegiance to Constitution of India. Next is to uphold sovereignty and integrity of India, to faithfully discharge the duty of the office. The last is to do right in all the manner for the people in accordance with respect to Constitution, without fear or favor or affection or ill will. Okay. Next comes the term. So the term is, there is no fixed term. So as long as he carries the majority, so long he or she will be the Prime Minister. However, the elections are held only once in 5 years. So the elections are held once in 5 years. So that is the actual term. Okay. Next is salary. Salary is not very important. Okay. Next is the power and functions of the Prime Minister. This section is important. So in relation to Council of Ministers, What are the powers? So Council of Ministers means you know. So all the ministers, so how many ministers are there today? So there are Agriculture Minister, Telecom Minister, then Information Minister, Home Minister, Finance Minister. So many ministers are there. There are variety of ministers. We'll discuss what are the varieties. So in relation to Council of Ministers, what is the power? So the Prime Minister recommends who can be a member of Council of Ministers. That is the President can appoint only him or her as the Council of Ministers. As the minister, he allocates the portfolios. Portfolios means what? Home Ministry, Finance Ministry, Agriculture Ministry, Fertilizer Ministry, Water Ministry. These are portfolios. So who allocates it? It is the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister can ask a minister to resign. So whenever he doesn't want a minister, he can ask a resign. He presides so he is the chairman of the meeting of the Council of Ministers. So he can also bring about the collapse of Council of Ministers. So collapse of Council of Ministers means what? So Council of Ministers totally at a time they resign when the Prime Minister alone resigns. So there is no need for individual ministers to go and submit his or her recognition. When the Prime Minister resigns, the entire Council of Ministers resign. So this is with respect to Council of Ministers. In relation to President, with respect to President, what is his power? So he is the principal channel of communication between the Council of Ministers. Whatever acts, whatever rules, whatever policies, whatever decisions are taken in the Council of Ministers, he or she, the Prime Minister, has to furnish furnish the information to the President, and whatever the information the President asks for, he or she has to submit, and he advises the President with respect to the appointment of important officers. What are the important officers? The Attorney General of India, Comptroller CAG, members of chairman and members of UPSC, Election Commission. All this are appointed by President on the recommendation of whom? Prime Minister. Okay. Next is in relation to Parliament. So in relation to Parliament, what is his power? He advises the President with respect to summoning and proroguing of the sessions of the Parliament. What is summoning and proroguing? Summoning means convening of the Parliament. So all these MPs will be in their constituencies in this particular date. Parliament session will be starting. So who advises? It is the Prime Minister. So when the Prime Minister advises, President is going to start the session. Okay. And also proroguing. Proroguing means what? Opposite of summoning, ending of the session. So he can recommend for the dissolution of Lok Sabha, most important. So dissolution 545 members, whoever are there. So the President can recommend, the Prime Minister can recommend to the President, dissolve the Lok Sabha. So then there will be elections again. So the authority lies in whom? With respect to Prime Minister. So next is other powers and functions. Other powers and functions. So he is the chairman of Niti Aayog. You know what is Niti Aayog? Next we will discuss when it comes to non-constitutional bodies. So he plays a significant role with respect to forming of national foreign policy. So he is the crisis manager of chief. He is the leader of party in power. He is the political head of services. Political head of services means what? So armed forces, I said, all these services, all India services, armed forces services, everybody. So the de jure authority, de jure head is whom? President. However, political head is whom? It is the Prime Minister. Okay. Next is role description. Role description means what? So many people have said the importance of the role of Prime Minister. So one or two I am going to read out for you. Lord Morley said Prime Minister as the primus inter pares. He is the keystone of the cabinet arc. So he considers the cabinet as a arc. So in the arc there will be one stone. This stone is called keystone. If this stone is removed, this arc will collapse. So Lord Morley says Prime Minister is the keystone of the cabinet arc. Likewise, Ivor Jennings says all roads in the constitution leads to Prime Minister. So by this you can gauge the importance of the post of Prime Minister, position of Prime Minister, relation with the President. So with respect to President, what is the relation of the Prime Minister? What are the articles? Articles I said 74, 75 and 78. I am going to repeat it again. So the President acts upon the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. That is said by Article 74. Next is the Council of Ministers are collectively responsible to Lok Sabha, House of People. That is said by Article 75. So 75 also says the Council of the Prime Minister is appointed by President. Which article says? Article 75 says the Prime Minister is appointed by the President. Next is Article 78. Article 78 says it is the duty of the Prime Minister to communicate all the decisions to the President. That is with respect to Article 78. So all the decisions the Prime Minister has to communicate to the President. That is Article 78. Important articles 74, 75, 74, 75 and 78. Okay. Next we are going to move to chapter on Central Council of Ministers. So we have spoken about Prime Minister. Now we are going to discuss about Central Council of Ministers. Okay. So constitutional provisions. So what are the constitutional provisions? So the same thing, yeah. So it is 74, 75 and 77. These are the constitutional provisions. What does 74 say? So aid and advice of the Prime Minister, Council of Ministers is required for President to act. What does 75 say? Prime Minister is appointed by President. All other ministers are appointed by President on the advice of Prime Minister. What does Article 77 say? Conduct of business of Government of India. Conduct of business of Government of India is said by Article 77. How the Government of India work is conducted day to day is said by Article 77. It says all the executive action of the government will be taken by the President. So the President can say in what manner all these orders will be signed. He can say I am going to sign the particular orders in this particular fashion. So you have to bring it in this particular format or this particular way. So he can also formulate rules for that. That is what is said by Article 77, but not very important. Okay, Article 75 also has some other provision. So what are the provisions? So first is appointment of Prime Minister. Next is collective responsibility. The next is So Article 74. Let us discuss Article 74 in some detail. First is this aid and advice. Second is the advice tendered by ministers. I said aid and advice. This advice will not be inquired by any court. So any court cannot inquire. So Article 75 already said regarding the appointment and collective responsibility. Next is by Amendment Act, 91st Amendment Act, Council of Ministers is said to be only 15% of the total strength of Lok Sabha. So Lok Sabha 545, 15% is what? 55 plus 23. So approximately 65, 75, 78. Totally there might be around 78 ministers. They cannot be exceeded. Okay. Next point is anybody who is disqualified on the ground of defection. What is defection? We are going to discuss later. Defection you might be knowing you might have seen in the TV channels. A person jumps from one party to another party or resigns from the party from which he has contested. That is what is meant by defection. Broadly, I'm going to discuss in detail later on. Okay. Next is, so the concept of pleasure of president I have discussed. Next is oath, secrecy, everything. So the concept of secrecy. Secrecy means what? Council of Ministers. So day-to-day administration will be carried out by the whom? By the Council of Ministers. So in that, so many policies, so many facts, so many things they will be knowing. So they should not disclose everything to the press or to the public. So they should keep secret information. So information should be kept secret. This is a legacy of British colonial times. So secret for conduct of business of the Parliament as the Council of Ministers, oath of secrecy. So also, so suppose I can also become a Council of Minister without being elected. However, I can become only for 6 months. That is also said by Article 75. Also, next is 77. I said all the executive action will be taken in whose name? In the name of President. Next is, so he says in which order these orders would be signed. The orders of the President, in what order it would be signed, would be said by the President. Okay, next is Article 78, duties of Prime Minister. I said whatever the information should be submitted. Information regarding the functioning of the government, the Prime Minister should submit to the President. So that is what is meant by Article 78. So nature of advice by my ministers. So what is this nature of ministers? So whatever the advice these ministers give to the President, it cannot be inquired by the law. It cannot be inquired by the courts. So courts are debarred from inquiring into the nature of advice. Next is appointment of ministers. So appointment of ministers, who appoints? So we can take ministers from Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha anywhere. Okay, for example, Manmohan Singh ji was from Rajya Sabha. So you can take the ministers from Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. However, even we can take from outside. However, that person has to become a member of either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha within 6 months. Okay, next is oath, salary and salary of minister. Salary is not very important. Oath is very important. Oath is similar to Prime Minister. So that is to bear faith and allegiance with respect to Constitution, to uphold the sovereignty and integrity, to do all the right acts without fear or favor or affection or ill will, or to faithfully discharge the duties of his office. These are the conditions in his oath. Next is responsibility of the ministers, collective responsibility. Which article? Article 75. Article 75 discusses about collective responsibility. What is responsibility? So whatever decisions, whatever acts, whatever policies they form, so the Council of Ministers are should be responsible for the Parliament. So responsibility also has a meaning. If they lose majority, in the Parliament, they have to resign. So even how this responsibility is exercised via the instruments of question hour, zero hour, and also making of statement of the ministers on the floor of the house. This responsibility is executed. Even responsibility, financial responsibility via formulation of budget. Tomorrow is budget. So the budget, even though the money is utilized by the executive, so they have to obtain the permission of the Parliament. That is also an element of responsibility. However, the major responsibility is the political responsibility. Collective responsibility means So all these 78 ministers are collectively responsible to Lok Sabha, not Rajya Sabha. So even if they are the members from, I said, the ministers can be from Rajya Sabha as well. Even if they are members from Rajya Sabha, they are collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. Collective means what? So if every person of the Council of Ministers forms a decision, so one single person should not go against. If he or she wants to go against, they have to resign from the Council of Ministers. Okay. So one example is Dr. Ambedkar. So he resigned from Council of Ministers over the Hindu Code Bill. So apart from Council of Ministers, so one more factor about Council of Ministers is the no confidence motion. No confidence motion means what? The Lok Sabha can only pass this no confidence motion, not the Rajya Sabha. So in no confidence motion means the House, that is the Lok Sabha, doesn't have faith in the government. So faith means what? They say you have lost the majority, so you cannot rule. When they say that, when this no confidence motion is passed, then the government collectively, all the ministers have to resign. That is what meant by the concept of collective responsibility. Along with collective responsibility, we have individual responsibility. What is individual responsibility? So individual responsibility means, so a single minister, a particular minister can be due to some bad act or something. So if the Prime Minister desires this particular minister should not be in Council of Ministers, he can be removed. He can be removed by whom? By President. Okay. So when the Prime Minister decides, so he or she can be removed. So that is individual responsibility. They are individually responsible to Prime Minister. Okay. No, next is no legal responsibility. So no legal responsibility means what? Whatever. So this concept is taken from United Kingdom. Whatever laws they form. So if the rules, suppose Ministry of Agriculture, minister forms a rule and signs the law. When he signs a law, he cannot be held legally responsible. So that particular policy, some negative thing is there. So for example, farm law was passed by the Parliament. So that you cannot hold agriculture minister legally responsible for farm law. So it is the entire Council of Ministers is responsible. So the court cannot summon the agriculture minister saying that why did you form this policy or why did you form this law. So there is no concept of legal responsibility. Next is composition of Council of Ministers. We have multiple composition. So composition, I already said, there is first at the highest level we have cabinet ministers. So you already know what is cabinet. Cabinet means the ministers who have very important portfolios like defense minister, home minister, finance minister. So these are important portfolios. The ministers who hold these portfolios are called cabinet ministers. Next comes the concept of minister of state. So next is minister of state. So minister of state means he doesn't attend the cabinet meetings. He will be heading lesser important ministries. So what are the lesser important ministries? Like mineral ministry, fishery ministry, all these ministries. Next is minister of state with independent charge. Independent charge means, so that particular ministry, he has independent charge. So that is what is meant by minister of state with independent charge. Next comes So, in the Minister of State, actually, why this is called independent charge means this Minister of State may be either attached to some cabinet minister. So, most of the time, if they are not attached to cabinet minister, they are called as Minister of State. For example, Finance Ministry. Finance Ministry has MOS, Minister of State, Anurag Thakur ji. So, Nirmala Sitharaman ji is the cabinet minister. However, Anurag Thakur ji is the Minister of State. He doesn't have independent charge. He is attached to the cabinet minister. Likewise, if the minister is having independent charge of the ministry, for example, fertilizer ministry, Sri Sadanand Gowda ji, he has independent charge. He is not attached to any cabinet ministry. That is what is meant by MOS, independent charge. Next is we have deputy ministers. So next in charge are deputy ministers. After that we have what? Parliamentary secretaries. So last is parliamentary secretaries. Okay. Next is cabinet difference with council of ministers. So Council of Ministers is a wider body, approximately 60 to 70 ministers. Cabinet is approximately 50 to 20 ministers. So there are in the Council of Ministers, 3 categories I discussed. So cabinet, there is the highest category. So Council of Ministers doesn't meet regularly. Cabinet ministers meet regularly. So all the powers is rested in Council of Ministers only on theory. Actually, it is vested in cabinet ministers. So these are some of the differences of cabinet and as well as council of ministers. Okay. So council of ministers is constitutionally recognized by which articles? Council of ministers is constitutionally recognized by articles 74 and 75. So in the constitution originally there was no concept of cabinet. However, this cabinet was given constitutional recognition by 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. 44th Constitutional Amendment Act by Sri Morarji Desai ji gave constitutional recognition for cabinet. That is what? That is when, so they say when imposition of emergency, the cabinet has to give in writing. So that is when the concept of cabinet gets constitutional recognition. So these are certain differences. Next comes the concept of kitchen cabinet. So we don't have the, so this kitchen cabinet means cabinet within a cabinet. Even cabinet ministry, cabinet is a wider body. 15 to 20 ministers, most of them will be at different parts of India at different time. So there are certain inner circle ministry, inner circle of prime minister, that is that is few 2 or 3 ministers. For example, our Narendra Modi ji has Sri Jaishankar ji, Rajnath Singh ji, Amit Shah ji, Nirmala Sitaram ji as inner circle. So circle within a circle. So they meet regularly and decide the policies. So that might be called as kitchen cabinet. So in this kitchen cabinet, so there might be certain outsiders also, outsiders like secretaries or friends or family members, which is not a good sign. So also we have the concept of shadow cabinet. Shadow cabinet means what? It is not there in India, it is there in UK. In UK what happens? Every minister, even including the prime minister, has a counterpart. So the opposition ministry, the leader of opposition is the counter of prime minister. So suppose finance minister is there, there will be one minister who is shadowing him, that is he will be watching him. So he will act as the minister's shadow. So whatever wrong he does, he will, whatever wrong the particular minister does, he will bring it into limelight. Also when the ministry resigns, they will take the power immediately. Who shadow ministry. So last comes the concept of articles. Articles are 74, 75, 77 and 78. These are the important articles. So let's move to cabinet committees. So what are the cabinet committees? Okay, what are the concept of cabinet committees? So, cabinet committees. So, out of the members of the cabinet, I told it is a body of 15 to 20 members. In these 15 to 20 members, what they do? They form certain committees. So, these committees are called cabinet committees. What are the features of these cabinet committees? So they are extra constitutional. That means constitution mein there is no mention of cabinet committees. There are two types of committees. What are the two types? Standing committee, ad hoc committee. Standing committee means which are permanent, which won't be subject to dissolution, which won't be dissolved. Ad hoc committees means they would be formed and dissolved. They would be formed for a particular cause. Once that cause is served, that particular committee will be dissolved. Next comes, so these cabinet committees are set up by Prime Minister whenever there is a need, and also they only majorly include cabinet ministers. Outside other ministers may not be barred. So mostly they are headed by Prime Minister. Okay, these are certain conditions of these are certain features of cabinet committees. List of cabinet committee. So the cabinet committees, certain committees I am going to read out. Cabinet committee on economic affairs, cabinet committee on prices, cabinet committee on political affairs, cabinet committee on security. Right now we have cabinet committee on parliamentary affairs, on accommodation, investment. So these are certain cabinet committees. So what are the functions of cabinet committees? So functions of cabinet committees. The political affairs committee deals with matters relating to domestic and foreign affairs. So each committee has its own function. Political affairs ministry, political affairs committee, domestic and foreign affairs. Economic affairs committee, so with respect to issues of economic sphere. Likewise, security committee, security issues. Okay. Also, so this is with respect to functions. What are the concept of group of ministers? So group of ministers means, so it is outside the cabinet, even cabinet ministers are included. So whoever, so in the council of ministers, and a group would be formed out of the council of ministers. So when that group is formed, it is called group of ministers. So this group of ministers was famous during the tenure of UPA, United Progressive Alliance. So they are ad hoc bodies. So they will be set up whenever there is a need and exigency. So whenever there is a need for some particular issue, group of ministers would be set up. Also there was concept of empowered group of ministers. So empowered group of ministers, they can take their own decisions. They need not wait for the assent of the Prime Minister. Okay. So second administrative commission has given certain recommendations. They said that constitution of too much group of ministers is not good. It is good, no, it is leads to major issues. So they have to be used selectively. This is all with respect to group of ministers. Next, we are going to start with the most important chapter of the Indian polity, which is the chapter on parliament. So this is the most important chapter of the Indian polity. So we already know what is the parliament. So since I have conducted a class of 2 hours today, and we will start afresh the concept of parliament tomorrow. So we are going to discuss the entire chapter of parliament tomorrow. So hope you have found the class useful. So whatever I am discussing is a concept clearing class, and also it will be helpful for your revision. So we are going to end the class today. Hope you found it useful. Please make good use of it. So keep revising, keep improving, take good care of your health. Take care. Jai Hind and thank you.